Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I'm going to bring you some really fun and really festive, patriotic DIYs to put on your front porch. I had a lot of fun creating these, and if you are ready for red, white, and blue, this is definitely the video for you. First, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, then click that notification bell, and in the drop-down menu, click all so you're notified about all notifications. I upload videos a couple times a month, and after taking a short break, I am back with more ideas, inspiration, and ready to give out more fun content. So definitely follow along. All right, let's get started with these front porch patriotic DIYs. For this first DIY, I'm going to start off with a blue pool noodle from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to measure this pool noodle into 4 12-inch sections. So right now, I'm just marking my sections, and then once that's done, I'm going to take a box cutter knife, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut down each one of my sections so I have 4 different pieces. Then I'm going to grab a red pool noodle that I also got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to measure 4 12-inch sections and cut them down. So now I have 8 pieces all together, 4 blue and 4 red. Next, I'm going to take a piece of foam board and this arrow, and I'm just going to use the arrow just to trace the top of it. You don't necessarily need to have the arrow, but I just thought it would be good to trace. And so once I trace it on the foam board, I'm just going to use that same box cutter knife, and I am just going to go ahead and cut my triangle out. And foam board is easy to cut through. You just want to score it a few times, and then you can see that it cuts right out. So I did decide that this triangle was just a little too big for my pool noodle. So what I'm going to do is just take a ruler and just make some lines, so that way I can make the arrow just a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut that down. Once I have the size that I like of the little point, I'm going to go ahead and do this 7 more times since I have 8 pool noodle pieces all together. I need 1 for each. After all my triangles were cut, I'm going to go ahead and take some super glue and hot glue, and I'm going to glue a craft stick to the back of each one of my triangles. Because these DIYs are going on my front porch, I don't want to use just hot glue because the sun will melt it, so that's why I'm going to use super glue in a lot of my projects today. So I went ahead and did this to all 8 of my little points. After that, I'm going to go ahead and glue my stick into the pool noodle. Now, you don't have to put glue at the end of the craft stick. You can actually skip that. It didn't even matter. But what I did do was put glue underneath the triangle where it was going to touch the pool noodle. And then as you can see there, I reinforced it with some hot glue. So to show you again, I put super glue and hot glue at the bottom of the triangle, slipped it in through my pool noodle. I did hold it there for a little bit until the glue set up, and then I went ahead and reinforced the back with some hot glue. And I did this for all 8. After all my triangles were glued in, I went ahead and decorated each one of my pool noodles. Now, I'm not going to show you all the designs that I did on each one, but I'll show you a few different ideas. So for this first red pool noodle, I'm going to go ahead and just make the simple stripes going up. Now, I did not measure any of this. I just eyeballed it, and I did use my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I did give each one of these stripes 2 coats. For another one of my red pool noodles, I'm just going to take my ocean chalk paint from Waverly, and I'm going to just make wavy lines going all the way up my pool noodle and going all around it. I really wanted these little firecrackers to be fun and animated and just entertaining on my front porch. Then for another pool noodle, I'm going to go ahead and use this paintbrush just to make the stripes going around my pool noodle. And I'm going to do this all the way down this pool noodle. Real quick, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new, thank you so much for stopping by today. I really hope that you enjoy what you see. And hey, stick with me for a while by hitting that subscribe button. If you're returning, thank you so much for choosing to come back. I hope you too get a lot of fun, inspiration, and ideas from today's video. For one of the blue pool noodles, I'm going to use this stencil that I actually got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to go ahead and stencil on some stars by using my white Waverly chalk paint. And to do this, I'm going to put a fair amount of paint on my brush, and then I'm just going to dab in an up and down motion to go ahead and stencil these stars on. And I went ahead and stenciled stars all around the pool noodle. So once I had all of my pool noodles decorated, it's time to go ahead and paint those triangles. So I'm just going to use the coordinating paint to go with each pool noodle. So you can see that this pool noodle is red and white, so I'm going to go ahead and use that ocean chalk paint to go ahead and paint the triangle. And I did make sure to paint the front, the sides, and the underneath part of the triangle as well. I did not paint the back. We're going to do that in just a little bit. But for now, I was just going to go ahead and paint each one of the triangles with different colors using red, white, or blue. Now, for the red, I used crimson chalk paint from Waverly, and even though the foam board is white itself, I did go ahead and put a coat of white Waverly chalk paint over it because I just felt like it looked more put together and kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And again, I just wanted to paint it to kind of protect it as well. So I did this until all of my little firecracker little triangles were painted. Once all my paint was dry, I went ahead and took these really long skewer bonfire poker things that I got from the Dollar Tree. And I cut it down to a length that I liked, and then I went ahead and fed it through the pool noodle so the flat part was up on top and the pointy part was at the bottom. Now, I only had 7 of these, so one may not look like the others, but I thought that this worked out great. Now, what I did was use that super glue and hot glue and just simply glued my skewer to the back of the triangle. And then wherever the skewer landed coming out from the bottom of the firecracker, I just went ahead and hot glued it down. Next, I painted all of my skewers black, and I also went ahead and hit the back of all of my triangles as well. So I have to say that I already decorated my front porch. You're going to see a very brief sneak peek at the end of this video of all these projects. However, I do have another video coming out soon of a decorate with me front porch. And I have to say, the display that I made using these little firecrackers is so adorable. I really love how it came out, and I think that you will too. So you're definitely going to want to catch my next video. All right, for my next DIY, I'm going to go ahead and use these posts that I actually stole from my dad. I didn't steal, I asked, but these were just hanging out in his garage, and this was completely inspired by Pinterest, and I kept seeing these big black firecrackers, and I've always wanted to make them, and when I saw these posts in my dad's shed, I could not believe them. They were perfect. So I cut these down to 3 different sizes, a long one, a medium size, and a short size. I went ahead and sanded all of them down, which you just saw, and once they were all sanded down and wiped down, I'm going to go ahead and give each one of these one good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white. After all my white paint was dried, I'm going to go ahead and take you through step by step how I decorated each one of these little posts. So for the middle post here, I'm just simply going to give this post, all 4 sides, including the top, a good coat of ocean chalk paint from Waverly. After that's completely dried, I'm going to take that stencil again, and I'm just going to use my Waverly chalk paint in white and just stencil on some stars. Now, some of the stars are hanging off the side, and I did turn my stencil so the stars were pointing in different directions, but I did let each side dry before I would turn it to do the other side. But I just did this until my whole post was covered in white stars. After all my paint was dry, I went ahead and put that off to the side, and we're going to work with that in just a little bit. But next, it was actually time to move to the smaller of the posts. So for this smallest post, I'm going to go ahead and take some painter's tape, and I'm going to wrap it around going horizontally right in the middle of the post. We're going to go ahead and paint the top portion, so that's why I want to go ahead and tape it off. And what I'm going to paint the top portion with is the Ocean chalk paint from Waverly, and I am going to hit all four sides and the top. After my blue paint was dried, I'm going to go ahead and take that stencil again. This time I'm going to use a smaller star on that stencil sheet, but I'm just going to use my Waverly chalk paint in white and stencil on some stars. I was able to fit 3 stars on each side, and one of them at least did hang down into like the white part of the block, but I actually thought that was pretty cool. And I kind of turned the stencil so they were going in different directions, but I really loved how these stars came out. Once my stars were dried, I'm going to go ahead and take more painter's tape, and this time I'm going to line the bottom of the painter's tape to the bottom of the blue portion, going all the way around my block. And then I'm going to add 1 strip of painter's tape going right down the middle on each side. We're going to go ahead and paint the red and white stripes that you would see on the flag, and I wanted at least 2 red stripes on each side. So after I had all my painter's tape on, I went ahead and used my crimson chalk paint from Waverly to create the red stripes. I apologize, I did cut off the bottom of this, but as you can see, I put the tape going all the way down. So once all of my paint was dried, I went ahead and peeled off all of my tape, which is so satisfying. Now, if there were some parts that kind of bled through, I just took my white paintbrush and just touched it up, and then some of the red did not touch the blue, but I went ahead and fixed that as well, and then put it to the side, and we'll come back to that later. Now for the tallest post, I am going to go ahead and do the red and white stripes going all the way around the post. So what I did was put 1 big piece of painter's tape going right down the center, and then I used my crimson chalk paint to paint in the stripes. Now what I should have done was do all my taping first and then paint, because it ended up not being even red, white, but that's okay. You would never notice if I didn't say anything. So after that side was dried, and now the red side that I just painted is facing me where I'm sitting. You can see my toe where I'm sitting. So I just flipped it. And now I'm going to go ahead and continue taping it off. So I put 1 long strip, a smaller strip next to that just for spacing. And then I'm going to go ahead and put another long strip, and this one ended up going around the corner, which was fine. And you do want to make sure that you push down your tape really well. That was my daughter showing you her princess helmet, I guess. I didn't know she did that until now. So here's a better angle. I just kept moving my spacer tape going all the way around my posts and just created my stripes until I got back to the front. So as you can see, I just keep peeling it off and moving it. This was really easy to do, but I just did want to show how I did this, just in case, you've never done this before. And you can see that I am lining it up to my spacer piece. Then once I peel that off, it is all taped up, and it is time to go ahead and use that crimson chalk paint again and paint the rest of my stripes. Once my paint was dry, I went again and peeled off all of the painter's tape, and like I said earlier, if there was any bleeding, I just took my white foam brush that had the white paint on it, and I just touched up those areas. I did then decide to go ahead and paint the top red as well. All right, moving back to the smaller of the pieces, I am going to go ahead and use a combination of super glue and hot glue to glue these letters down. Now, these letters were the wooden letters that I got in a pack from the Dollar Tree, and I just went ahead and painted the front of them with just some black paint. So I started in the middle with the S, and then I'm going to go ahead and move to the U, and then glue the A. That way I know that they are all centered and proportional to each other. I love the little touch that this USA added to this little firecracker. So then after I had all my letters down, it's actually time to add the fuses on top of each one of these blocks. To do this, I am going to use nautical rope that I got from the Dollar Tree. And at first I'm going to start off by cutting off one end that was taped. So I'm going to cut that off, and then I'm just going to cut a small strip that I kind of felt was tall enough, and I apologize, I didn't measure, so I don't know how long. I just eyeballed it. And I'm going to unbraid the bottom so that way it has more to lay on. And then again, by using my hot glue and super glue, I'm just going to go ahead and press down the bottom of my nautical rope. Now, I did hold it there for quite a while until at least the hot glue set up, and then I kind of trimmed it down. I reinforced some areas with more hot glue, but basically I just wanted to make sure that the bottom of that rope was nice and glued down. So I did feel like the nautical rope was not sturdy enough, like it was flimsy, it kept flapping over. So I just simply took some wired jute cord that I had in my stash and just wrapped it around, and that really helped to keep the fuse up and down instead of flapping over. And then I did go ahead and unbraid a little bit of the top part just so it looked like these firecrackers were ready to go. I repeated this on each one of my posts, and I have to say I loved how each one of these came out. They look great separate, but they also look great all together. And the best part was this project was completely free for me because, like I said, my dad had this wood in his shed, and I already had the paint, the rope, the stencil, the accessories, the letters, anything that I used, I already had in my stash. So hey, you can't beat free, right? Like I said, hang tight because in a little bit at the end of this video, you're going to get a flash sneak peek of how this looks put all together and finished. For my next DIY, we're going to go ahead and make some pillows for my porch swing. So I just wanted to show you, I'm going to use this unique stitch. I did get it from Amazon. I can link it below, but I do not sew. So this unique stitch really came in handy because it was basically like stitching. Then I took this chair cover that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I could not believe it. I brought this pillow up to my craft room so I can use the stuffing, but when I opened that chair cover, I realized that the pillow fit perfectly in that chair cover. So it saved me so much work from having to stuff that entire thing. So once I had my pillow inside the chair cover, I simply went ahead and used that unique stitch to go ahead and quote unquote stitch the bottoms together. Now, this was the first time I had ever used this unique stitch, so it did take me a second to kind of get the hang of it, but I did learn quickly that this is one of those things that you kind of have to leave it to dry completely. So what I did was I just worked in sections. I would put a little bit of the glue down, and then I took these clamps and I actually clamped down my ends. Now, what I forgot to do, I meant to fold the ends in so that way it was a nice clean stitch, quote unquote. So you definitely maybe want to do that so it's cleaner, but hey, this still looked great, and for $1.25, you can't beat this big flag outdoor pillow. So I loved how this looked on my porch swing. Again, you'll see a sneak peek coming up, but I just went ahead and glued this all down, clamped it all together, and I let it dry for at least an hour and a half. Next, we're going to make some smaller accent pillows by using this navy blue pillowcase that also came from the Dollar Tree. So what I did was unfolded the whole thing. Then by using my fabric scissors, I'm going to go ahead and cut it down the middle. So I have two pieces. I'm going to put one of those pieces to the side, and then for the other piece, I'm going to cut that in half. Now, hindsight, I wish I would have used both these pieces to make the pillows, but I didn't think I'd have enough stuffing in my one pillow that I had, so I just cut that one in half. They are a little on the small side, but I think they're cute just to throw on my porch swing. So as you can see, two of the sides are already connected, so I just needed to use that unique stitch to go ahead and stitch the open sides down. Now you want to leave yourself an opening, so you're going to see I did this whole long side and then half of the bottom as well. Now I did mess this one up, Before I started gluing, I should have flipped this inside out so it was a nice clean edge, but I completely forgot. So before you start gluing anything, flip that inside out, glue it, leave it to dry for about an hour and a half, come back to it, and then flip it right side out, and then you can move on to this step, which was stuffing my pillows. So I went ahead and stuffed my pillows. Now I did make 2 of these, but I'm just going to show you me making 1. And so you can see that I'm just stuffing it, and I'm just using old stuffing from a pillow that I had hanging around. And then I'm just going to simply go ahead and once I felt like it was stuffed enough, I'm just going to go ahead and use that unique stitch to stitch the ends together. And again, I'm going to use my clamps. Then I'm just going to leave it and forget it. I'm going to let this dry for a while before I come back to it. And when I come back to it, I'm actually going to do something about those ugly frayed edges, and I was racking my brain on how I can save these pillows from looking ugly, and what I came up with was actually using some ribbon as trim. So I had this red and white, actually it's more like red and burlap kind of ribbon, and so what I did was all the short sides of each one of my pillows, I went ahead and hot glued it on. I did not have enough of this ribbon to go around all 4 sides of both pillows, so I just did the short side with this striped ribbon. And then for the long sides, I actually have this blue and white star ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby either last year or the year before. And I'm just going to do the same thing, and I'm purposely covering those ugly frayed edges or sides. So again, I used the blue and white stars on the longer sides and then the striped ribbon on the shorter sides, and I did this for both of my pillows. And I did cut off any ribbon that was hanging over, and I actually went through and cut off any of the frayed edges that was hanging underneath as well. So I really loved how these ended up coming out. Like I said, they were a little on the smaller side, so I wish that I would have just used the 2 halves when I cut it in half originally, but I think they were great little accent throw pillows to use on my front porch swing, and you'll see this put together in just a little bit. For my last DIY, I'm going to go ahead and make another insert for my easel. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I have an easel, and it was 2-sided, but I decided to make some of these inserts so I can have them for every holiday or every season. So now it's time to make one for the 4th of July. So as you saw, I had my Valentine's Day one that I made in a previous video around Valentine's Day, and I just used that to trace onto some more foam board, and now I'm just using my knife to go ahead and cut my big rectangle out. And what this does is it fits perfectly inside my easel, so I can go ahead and switch these out for the seasons. After that, I did decide to use the July page from this Farm Fresh 2022 calendar that I got either at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. And as you can see, it doesn't cover the entire piece of foam board, but that's okay. We're going to work with it. And to adhere this calendar page to the foam board, I'm just going to use some Mod Podge. What I did was start at the top, and then I just Mod Podged my way down until I got to the bottom of the calendar page. Now, I've never not had wrinkles with these really thin calendar pages, so if this wrinkles, it's just, it just adds to the rustic look, I guess. But you do want to make sure to pay attention to the edges and the sides and make sure that those are completely glued down. And then as you go, you want to kind of wipe over it too, or press over it too, so that way you can get the majority of the wrinkles out. I even went over this with my little brayer tool that I got from Amazon. Again, this is linked down below. Any of the tools I use are, unless it came from the Dollar Tree. And now I'm just going to go over this entire calendar sheet and put a nice coat of Mod Podge over it to protect it from the elements outside. I don't want the sun to fade the colors, and I don't want the rain to ruin this, although it is a covered porch, so I should be okay. So next, to cover the bottom and the top, I'm going to Mod Podge some of this burlap ribbon onto my board, and I just lined up the top of the burlap ribbon to the bottom of the page, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the top as well. Now I did leave some ribbon on each end because I'm going to actually wrap it around and hot glue it to the back, which you'll see here in just a second. So, but you do want to make sure that you put a decent amount of Mod Podge on each piece of fabric or burlap, and that way it's nice and glued down. So then, like I said, I went ahead and folded the excess ribbon to the back, and I'm just going to hot glue that down, and I did this on the top and the bottom. Then after that, I'm just trimming off the excess ribbon, and again I did that on the top and the bottom, so I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. Next, I'm going to take this bag of foam scatter stars, and I'm going to take a big white one and then a small blue, red, and white one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully, by using my knife, I'm going to cut these in half. And I'm doing this because we are going to glue these to the board, and this just makes it so much easier to glue down when it's flat on the back. Not only that, but now you have double the amount of stars. So I went ahead and cut down each one in half, and then I laid them out in the back of my truck, and once I had them laid out how I liked it, I'm just going to simply use some hot glue to hot glue these down. So I ended up putting the big white one in the center, then two blue ones next to it, and then the red stars next to those. And then I wanted to add one more little layer, so I took the small white star that I had cut in half, and I'm going to go ahead and hot glue one of those to each side. I really loved the texture and the detail that this little star display gave, and it's 3D, so it's fun and entertaining to look at. Then to finish my project, I'm going to take this red, white, and blue twine that I believe I got from Michael's, and I'm going to start in the back and hot glue it down, one end down, and then I'm just going to wrap my twine around the burlap part 4 times. And then I'm going to hot glue the end of that part to the back, and then cut off the excess. And again, I did this to the top piece of burlap and the bottom. Now the trick is you want to pull it taut so it's nice and wrapped around. And that was it for this little easel insert. And in just a second, you're going to see a picture, a flash sneak peek, so they're not going to last long, so don't blink, of how these projects came together. But to see the full effect and to see how I completely decorated, catch my next video, which will be my Decorate With Me front porch. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn on your notifications, and hey, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!